goes for goal and finishes off the PSG victory.
Nuno Mendes est lancé, Nuno Mendes navigue, Nuno Mendes passe devant Quadrado, le tir, oh il est beau celui-là, le but de Nuno Mendes.
You know the football, it is what it is.
Le premier but de Ronald Colomboigny avec le Paris Saint-Germain, ah quelle joie.
Hello and welcome to PSG Review, also known as the show catching its breath after a really emotional turmoil that has been the so-called group of death in this autumn's Champions League. 4 great teams, 4 great stadiums and atmospheres, and a competition that was pretty open until the final whistle of the match last night as I record this on Thursday evening. During the 2 matches that were played simultaneously, there was a chance that any team would have qualified. PSG had the chance to win the group, as did Dortmund, but PSG had also the chance to be third and end up in Europa League. At one point of the night, Newcastle was going through as the group's second, and in the end they were at the bottom of the pile. Really amazing group, especially compared to the other sort of vanilla options that were available in other groups. I'm very glad we did it, glad we got through. My name is Mikko. Make sure you rate and review PSG Review, and thank you so much for listening. Tonight it's not just me. I'm here with journalist Lee Davey, a writer and broadcaster for TalkSport, Sky Sport and Ligue 1. Have you recovered from the match already?
Yeah, it was a roller coaster of emotions, wasn't it? It was a night where, literally, PSG could have finished anywhere in the top 3. They moved upwards, they moved downwards. Everything was very, very tense. But I'm recovered. It was. I did breathe a huge sigh of relief at the full-time whistle. I can't lie to you.
There's the same here. It's really great to have you with me, and thank you so much for coming through. It's been a little bit of a frustrating match. It was, I think it was the second one in a row as far as Champions League goes, where I thought that PSG was the better team on the pitch, but the struggle to score goals, that's really something that I can't really wrap my head around. What was your reading of the match? Are you happy with the qualification in general, or concerns over the inability to win and finish the group as a group winners?
Yeah, I think if we'd have been here and we'd have gone out, last night, we would be here on this, on this PSG review speaking, saying, you'd have took second place, to go through. The fact of the matter is that we have got second place, and obviously first place would have been great when you look at the teams that would potentially come up against if you're in second place compared to first place, and you always want to top your group, and PSG haven't done that for the last couple of seasons. So in this situation, slightly disappointed, but for me, happy to have gone through. It was a tough group for us. This is probably, I don't think there's been a tougher group in the last 12 years for PSG. This was a real slog. Every game was a real challenge. So to come through that and to qualify, I think we all need to, just tip our hats to the team. Yes, it wasn't pretty at times, but they got through ultimately, and that's what it's all about at this stage.
Yeah, and it's a new project. I mean, I've been talking about it really the whole autumn, but that is the nature of it. We are just sort of like, it's sometimes difficult to sort of wrap your head around how long does it take to build a project. But longer than this, generally speaking. This is still a very new project. There's a new coach, loads of new players, and I think I really agree with you that the level of this group. I was looking at all of the different groups and the final results of various different groups, and then you just compared the group that PSG was in. It's on a different planet to the rest of them. They're very sort of like, I mean, there's been clubs who basically just walked into being group winners. I'm not trying to belittle anybody, but really the competition. 4 great clubs, stadiums, atmospheres, fans, fan bases. Really, really impressive stuff, I think, this group of death. I don't regret having been in it.
No, absolutely not. I think, I think people sometimes forget, we had a really tough group last year, Benfica, who were on fire, and Juventus, although they're not Juventus of old, they're still a historic football club that takes some beating. But obviously when the draw came out this time round, it was almost kind of like, maybe the last few years we'd have been better equipped to top this group. But to have this group, this level of group, in what ultimately is a very transitional season for us. That was an opportunity for the likes of Newcastle to really get at us and cause a scalp against, PSG, who were the seeded team in the group. An opportunity for Milan to get one over on PSG, and also for Dortmund as well, because they had some previous with us back in 2020 where, we knocked them out of the Champions League. So we were a real kind of scalp for a lot of these teams. And, I think that most people prior to the group stage starting would have expected out of the 4 teams, it was a bit of a lottery really who would go through. But I think most people would have expected, PSG. Most people would have said, yeah, okay, I think PSG and one other. But I'm hoping that a group of this magnitude, of this difficulty now, will really kind of set this team up for the knockout rounds, because there's been I know it's an old cliche, but there's been no easy games in this group. Every game has been a real battle where they've really had to earn every point. And it's been tough. We've had 3 very difficult away games, 3 difficult home games. And, this should set the team up nicely for the level that's going to be facing us in the round of 16, whoever we get. So I'm hoping that will be a huge positive going into the round of 16 in February.
Yeah. I'm very happy that we qualified to the knockouts. That's really the main thing, and I think that's just a positive. And it is true that the next opponent in Champions League is probably going to be one of the stronger teams. I mean, it is a group winner, but quite a few of them. We can talk about this a little bit later, more about the potential next opponents. But there's some huge teams there, of course. One of the big topics of this match, or perhaps after this match, was that Kylian Mpappé didn't really seem very happy that the team wasn't sort of pushing all the way to the last whistle to trying to get the 3 points and win the group. And Luis Enrique said as follows: "It's normal for the players to be frustrated. We had 5 chances to score, 5 chances. We would be stupid to concede a goal on the 85th minute. If player is frustrated, it's up to me to manage the risk-taking. As a coach, I have to manage tensions. That's my role." And he has a very good point there, I think. But there is quite a big difference in the type of team that you can get next as a group winner than what you will get as a runner-up, most likely. What do you think about this? Was this the right choice to play safe? I mean, conceding a goal, mind you, would have meant Europa League. So stakes were high.
Look, as far as I'm concerned, Paris Saint-Germain have had a bit of a dismal away record in the Champions League. They've given away, and let's look at some of the goals that they've given away recently. It's not just, let's look at Champions League goals. You see that goal against Newcastle. You could look at the ones at St. James's Park, but also the one more recently at the Park, which was again just a gift for the opposition. We look at even for me the first goal of Milan at the San Siro. I don't think Donnarumma covered himself in glory, to be honest with you, with that kind of overhead kick from Rafael. Maybe being a bit harsh, but, it is what it is. Then I look at, some of the other goals, again, that we've conceded just in general this season. PSG, last night, for example, self-destruct again, wasn't it? The goal from Adeyemi was, that was all of our own making. So PSG can self-destruct at any moment, and when it comes to pressure, it's a team that's historically cracked under pressure. And as far as I'm concerned, it was about getting through. Now, I understand where Kylian's coming from. He's an absolute winner of the highest order. He wants to come first and everything. He didn't want to settle for second. But unfortunately, this club has not performed. This team has not performed well enough in this group away from home. So, as I said, we from my perspective, it was about going through. Did I want to win the group? Yes. Did I feel we could win the group? Absolutely. I thought we could win last night. I thought, the Dortmund are 5th in the Bundesliga. Yes, they've done one in the Champions League. Those 2 wins over Newcastle, the win in the San Siro. But, I didn't fear them. I felt that we could take the game to them and beat them. But ultimately, again, we missed too many chances. So there was enough time in that 85 minutes to really finish that game off. A lot of missed chances, which has been, really the story of this group for certainly over the last 2 or 3 games for PSG. But a real strange one for me, because seeing them go through and without winning any of their last 3 group games. I mean, I don't know if anybody's able, who's listening is able to have a look at that and see if that's ever been done before. Maybe kind of look into that. That was a really strange set of circumstances for me, that you can not win any of your last 3 group games but still qualify. So it was a really strange group. So, and anything could happen at any time. It really was one of those kind of groups. So I'm totally okay with Luis Enrique's philosophy, certainly in the last 5 minutes. Even though, okay, it might be tinged with a slight bit of disappointment that we didn't win the group, because I felt it was there for the taking, and I felt that PSG were the better team last night in Dortmund. But we're through, and we'll face who we face, and it's a lot better than dropping into that Europa League with the likes of Marseille.
Absolutely. No, I really agree also with what you're saying. It is very true. Last time that PSG won in Champions League, it's 1.5 months ago, something along those lines. It's a long time ago, and both of the last 2 matches were there to be won. So there is time for some self-reflection, I'm sure. Also, you kind of have to, the team has to look into itself, and we'll talk more about that also in a minute. But Warren Zaire-Emery, he was the man of the match, quite deservedly so, I would say. Donnarumma got some great saves. I would say that he's of course been a little bit there, how will he be doing that type of thing? But I think he got some good saves. And Mpappé, he was creating chances, there also. And I felt that Hakimi had really a night to forget. Lee Kang-in was fairly sloppy. I think he made too many errors. And I felt also that Kolo Muani, he just hasn't been able to find his spot in this team really. And he's not quite the striker or whatever. And just a little bit, struggling to find that edge that he needs, and the goals aren't coming even from situations that you'd probably realistically would have to score a few more goals from those. Those are some of my observations. Do you agree, disagree? Do you have any other players that caught your eye in good or bad?
Yeah, I mean, we'll start with Warren Zaire-Emery, who's just kind of going from strength to strength. This is a guy that wasn't supposed to play again in 2023, and he's just took this game last night by the scruff of the neck, and he's dragged PSG back into the game, and ultimately scored the goal that's helped them qualify for the next phase. And again, there's not many more words we can say for this young guy. He's 17. It appears that he's closing in on a new contract in the spring when he turns 18. And that could be just about the most important piece of business PSG do next year. And I'll put that above renewing Mpappé as well. He is going to be a phenomenon. There's a reason why some of the biggest clubs in Europe have, keeping a watchful eye on him. And whilst they are, I'm not worried that he's going to go anywhere. I think he's Parisian. I think he knows that, he knows where his home is. I think that, he's going to be the natural successor to Marquinhos when it comes to taking the captaincy. I think everything is set up for this boy to just be an absolute superstar and a legend for the club. Hopefully he stays fit. Hopefully he continues to progress, and I don't see any reason why he wouldn't. But I just watched him last night, this guy, and just the way he'd get the ball, he'd show for the ball, he didn't hide at any point. When PSG went a goal down, he literally fronted up, puffed his chest out and said, come on, let's get back into the game. That's the kind of performance you want from a captain. That's what you expect from your captain. And this guy's 17 is absolutely staggering. What he's doing already at such a tender age. I think we've got a real superstar on our hands here, I really do. And I can't wait to see how he really progresses through his career, in Paris going forwards. Again, I'm in agreement with you. I think Donnarumma made some nice saves. Look, he's been under the microscope a lot recently. He's been, he's made some very high profile errors. I want him to do well. I do. I want him to do well for Paris Saint-Germain, of course. A massive concern for me is his inability to catch a ball. Every time a ball comes at him fairly comfortably, he'll push it away. And sometimes that falls into the path of opposition plays in situations where he doesn't need to do that. That's his go-to. And that really worries me, the way he just pushes the ball away instead of catching it and you're almost holding the ball. So, yeah, I think he needs to strike a balance in that. Obviously, there's some issues with his footwork, which I think could ultimately cause him. Well, I think there'll be movement in the goalkeeper position next season. I'll just get onto that. Maybe that's for another time for another discussion. But look, as long as he's at the club, I hope that he performs well and he starts to improve and get his confidence back. Again, with Kolo Muani, he had a few flashes, but again, a worrying thing for me is his first touch, which I find really, really erratic, really poor first touch. The ball will come in, it will move literally 2 or 3 yards in front of him, and he has to use his pace to then catch up and get the ball back. So his first touch is a real concern for me, for someone who is, that price tag. Yes, he didn't choose a price tag. He doesn't know his place yet, but neither does Gonzalo Ramos. I think there's a problem there. Almost kind of, we brought 2 strikers in. I know Kolo Muani's not a number 9, so to speak, but it's almost like as a club we don't know what to do with them. And again, I don't know if that's something for another time. I hopefully that forward area sorts itself out, and these players can really start to embed themselves in this team. Because at the moment, with Kylian so dominant in that area, and very few chances created for these 2 guys that have set back the club the best part of 170 million euros or whatever it is. We're not creating nowhere near enough chances for these guys, and any chances they do get, they're creating themselves. But yeah, look, it is what it is. I thought that Lee Kang-in was really poor, and I don't want to be negative. I'm just assessing his performance. I thought it was very sloppy and very poor in possession. But, as I said, there were some good performances, there were some not so good performances. And hopefully, we can pick things up. We've got a massive game on Sunday, and we're back to league duty. And, we need to keep that gap at the top at 4 points or potentially more. So hopefully these players can dust themselves off and put in a good performance at Lille on Sunday.
Absolutely. That's what we are hoping for. And I'd like to believe that they can, but we will have to wait and see. Let's take a little bit of a step back. We are now almost sort of halfway through the season. There's a few matches before the new year, but if we focus on this Champions League group stage, as we're still kind of going through that, 6 matches, 2 wins, like said. Last one was 1.5 months ago. 2 draws and 2 defeats. Of course, very tough group. That's something that we've established, and it really has to. You have to emphasize that it can't be left unsaid. And 9 goals scored and 8 conceded. Is that good enough for PSG?
Defensively, no. But again, go back to the point that we've given away a lot of goals. I would say it's not good enough, but I'd say it's not completely unexpected. My reason is because we're a team that is learning to play a completely new philosophy of football that's playing out from the back. We have a goalkeeper who is not, in my opinion, primed to play this type of football because he's not good enough with his feet. We have a nervousness, a real nerve about in the defensive area. So whilst this will get better and the players will get comfortable, and let's be honest, we've got away with those defensive mistakes in Liga, and as you would, but in the Champions League, you will get punished, and we have been, especially at Newcastle. We were punished by their high press and their real kind of aggression in the, against our possession-based play, and it caused all sorts of problems for us. So there will be issues throughout the season as we get used and adapt to this new style of football that Luis Enrique's kind of, really starting to implement in the team. However, the goal scoring has been an issue as well. I mean, 9 goals in 6 games with, an incredibly talented forward line and a midfield that, is also now a lot more capable of chipping in with goals. 9 goals is not enough. And you just need to look at the last 2 games. I mean, we could have scored 6 or 7 against Newcastle and probably could have had 4 or 5 last night. But we've got to put those chances away, because as we get deeper into this tournament and we start to play teams that, will, especially going away from home, we may only get 2 or 3 chances a game. You've got to be able to put 1 or 2 of those away. So we have to be more clinical. So yes, okay, when we look at the record from the group stage, it doesn't make fantastic reading. The important thing is that we're through. So hopefully we can kind of look at that and move forward. I mean, I expect PSG to be a more well-polished team in the new year. By February, with an extra couple of months behind us, some tough league games coming up. We've got Coupe de France coming up, where hopefully some of these fringe players can get some minutes and really kind of, cement themselves and build their confidence up. So, I'm really, I don't know. Obviously, we don't know who we're going to draw yet, but I'm hoping that we will, go into that in real good, in a good place, and hopefully having, built up a little bit more confidence in ourselves and a little bit better on the board in possession defensively by the time we roll around to the spring.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think you were talking a little bit about like the tactics and things like that also. Luis Enrique, he's a man that likes to surprise us. He's been experimenting a bit sometimes when it felt really that the experimenting was not needed. But also an equal argument, I think, could be made that what has been the difference of PSG, well, now essentially going through as a runner-up, but not winning the group is also, like you said, those chances that have been plenty, but they just haven't been finished. So, and that same, like I said, against Dortmund and against Newcastle, for sure, we could have comfortably won this group. What is your reading of this? Is it a tactical question, or where we actually failed on an individuals, and especially like now the forwards that were supposed to be a strong point, as they have been, but especially also this year, where we let down. I don't want to sound too dramatic. Where we let down. It's a qualification. That is what counts. But of course, not winning the group, as difficult as it was it more about the tactics and those experimentations, or was it about that those players were just unable to put the ball in?
I think it's a mixture. I think it's been a very mixed bag. If we look back to the first game, which was that 2-0 win over Dortmund, I thought it was a very typical PSG performance that, kind of mirrored the start of the season, where we came out the blocks, we were dominating possession, and after that we went to Newcastle, and obviously we had this crazy 4-2-4 formation at St James's Park that really came out of nowhere and surprised everyone, where we included Ramos and Colin and, Dembele and Mpappé, and, to go to St James's Park where they press so high, they're really aggressive in the way they play. It was just completely wrong. I think the tactics were wrong in that game. So when I say we look at what the cause was of such a difficult group for us, I think there's a mixture of things. I think the players are getting used to this new style of play, this new philosophy. There's going to be mistakes along the way. There's going to be teething problems along the way. When I think about when Pep took over at Manchester City, it was very similar in his first season. The players got to grips with his style, and then, the rest is history. We look at Arsenal, again, Arteta, some of the fans wanted him out within the first couple of seasons just purely because it wasn't going to plan. There were mistakes made. It wasn't great viewing. And now we're in a situation where they're absolutely flying because they've bought into his philosophy. They've been patient. The board were patient, and the players have finally kind of, the light bulb moment's gone and everything's kind of clicked. And they're playing some fantastic football. I believe that PSG will be in the same boat. I think the same will happen there. It's just a bit of a bedding period, but it was just a case of we couldn't have asked for a worse group at a time when we are, we're ultimately transitioning into a completely different club and team. So it was the worst possible group. So this, from that perspective, I thought we've done well to go through. Even if it is in second place, we're through. We're in the last 16. It wasn't pretty, but it will be. It will be going forward. I know it will. This will all come to fruition, and this will, this style of play, this patience that we're giving Luis Enrique, I think it's really going to pay off for the club. So I'm really confident about the future.
Yeah, me too. I don't want to come across too clickbaity or negative. I'm usually trying. I'm more of a glass is half full kind of a person. But Kylian Mpappé, 3 goals in 6 matches, and 2 of those were penalties. Is that good enough for the best player in the world?
He won't be happy with it. This is a guy who's, as soon as Messi was given the Ballon d'Or, his quest for next year's began the following morning. He gets into training, and we go again. Now, since then, the Ballon d'Or at the end of September, sorry, at the end of October, I should say, he's had three Champions League games, and ultimately, me and you both know that he's always going to be judged on what he does in Europe as opposed to what he does in Ligue 1. That's just the way it is, and also, obviously, what he does with the French national team. So he knows he's got to do better. He knows that his performances have to be stronger. He has to drag this team. I mean, people were saying it last night. If there's anybody to drag this team through in its, in a time where it's in such a precarious position, this is what Kylian's there for. This is what he gets paid for. This is his moment when you need to go and win a Ballon d'Or, when you want to be up there as one of the best, or in contention to win these big individual awards, and obviously also help PSG achieve their goals as well. Then you have to be the man to drag that team through. Now, for me, he did okay last night. He didn't pull up any trees. He wasn't fantastic. He did okay. But that man ultimately was Warren Zaire-Emery last night. Who did that. Look, for Kylian Mpappé, nobody knows the future in terms of what's going to happen there. That will kind of manifest and sort itself out as the season goes on. But for me, again, I think he's still adapting to this new style as well. We've played counter-attack football for the last few years, and, this is where Kylian Mpappé gets his speed. When you get Kylian Mpappé in space, running at your last man, running at your defender, that's when he's most dangerous. Whereas we play possession-based football now. We pass it in squares, in circles around the penalty box until we can find an opening. We almost, or we almost try and pass it into the net. We pass for passing's sake. So, that's going to affect Kylian, because he doesn't, that's not where his strong point, and he's having to create chances for himself in really tight areas now because of how we set up as a team. So I think, yes, it's not been his best campaign so far, but, we know he's capable of the extraordinary, and ultimately he will be judged on what he does in these knockout rounds. Now, hopefully he's got some games in him where he can really, showcase what he's all about. We know that when the going gets tough, we know on the big stage that he's capable of delivering. He's done it in World Cup finals. He's done it in Champions Leagues. Let's see what he produces in the second half of the season.
Absolutely, and I think that he was very unlucky not to score yesterday. It was one of the most bizarre things that I have seen, that when Sule was blocking that chance by Mpappé, it was just the most remarkable. I don't know to what extent it was luck, to what extent it was skill, but it was just amazing, individual moment from Sule. So it's a bit harsh also. Like, Kylian could have gotten.
It was unlucky, wasn't it? There, it was very unlucky. Literally, it was one of those moments he just stuck out a leg and got lucky. The defender got lucky, let's be honest. But any other day, that would have gone in.
Yeah, I do think so also. Do you think that he's going to extend or not? I mean, this is the big question, the speculation and all that. And I don't even want to get too much into it, because it's a kind of like, clearly we don't know. But what's your feeling about that?
This is, look, obviously, I'll just give my feeling, because only Kylian knows what's going to happen, and what he wants to do. My thought is that in some ways he wants to extend, because he can see that the club's finally going in the right direction. I think he's finally the man at PSG, because remember, he joined when Neymar joined and then Messi joined. It's finally his team with his friends. His international teammates, and he's certainly some of his close friends. However, I think that he feels maybe there's a pressure that you have to go to Madrid. You're 25, you haven't left France, you want to win a Ballon d'Or, you get the chance to go to Real Madrid, something that you wanted to do, it was your dream as a kid. You have the opportunity. I think there'll be people in his ear telling him, stay in Paris, and there'll be people in his ear saying, you must go, you must leave, now's the time to leave. He'll also know that this is the last time that Madrid will come in for him. And the situation is that you're going to have people like Jude Bellingham, you're going to have people like Erling Haaland that will be almost leapfrogging him in that Ballon d'Or race. And he's always going to be a slight disadvantage if a PSG, in a PSG team that's not really primed to win this competition at the moment. Now, they may surprise us. I mean, I'm not expecting them to win it this season, of course, but, you know, it does affect his chances. And whatever anyone says, I know we keep coming back to this Ballon d'Or, it's obviously a big deal to him. He wants to win that. He wants to be recognised as the best player in the world, no matter how much he plays it down. I think that's a huge deal to him to be recognised on that award. It's about what PSG can offer. And, you know, is he in a team that's going to give him Champions League football? You know, in the latter stages, is he a team that's going to be, capable of winning the Champions League? I don't think so at the moment. But it's just what his attachment is to PSG. Is that attachment strong enough to say, no, I'm not going to Madrid, I want to finish what I've started here? Or is it a case of, it's time to go, maybe I'll go for a few, 4 or 5 years and I will come back and finish my career in Paris? I think he will go. I think he'll go. I think the urge will be too much for him to turn down. And it'll be a massive shame, but this team is now primed to cope without Mpappé, with a few extra additions and a little bit of leverage in terms of getting his wage bill off out of the club. And I'm not trying to push him out of the club, of course I'm not. I'd love him to stay, but my point is that if he does go, this club is in a very healthy position to move on and build its own, build a new team around, players that will have to step out of his shadow and really show what they're all about. But I think he might go. I think he might go this time. I think this is kind of his last chance to go to Madrid, and I think he will go. But I think he'll go with a heavy heart because I truly believe he loves the club and he wants what's best for the club. But I'm not sure if PSG are matching his immediate ambitions, and I think that's what it might come down to.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting thing to me. I think if I'm thinking about it, and I've said this before in the show, the biggest thing that Kylian Mpappé can do in club football is to win the Champions League in Paris. Like winning that in Madrid is gonna be. I mean, it's just 115th Champions League for them. It's a standard thing. It's slight exaggeration.
I agree.
But nevertheless, that's nothing special. He's just going to be one of those people who have won it, and there's going to be people who have won it so many times that there isn't anything that special about it. But then when you think about the Ballon d'Or situation that you mentioned, I'm not a big fan of Ballon d'Or. I think that in a team sport, individual trophies it's a little bit sketchy. But at the same time, when you look at it, the disadvantage is there because Messi can win Ballon d'Or without doing much in a club team for the last couple. Of course, he has done things in the club team before, but we know quite well that he hasn't done anything much in the last couple of seasons. Erling Haaland doesn't have to do anything in his national team. Makes no difference how Norway does. Norway doesn't have a bad team. They have great players there, Odegaard himself and others. But nevertheless, he's never judged on that. But Mpappé is judged on everything all the time. And it seems to me that the inspection of his performances is just on a little bit different level than some of those others. This might also be just what I think because I follow him more closely than any of those other players. But it certainly feels to me that there's something to this idea.
Yeah. I mean, you raise great points. I mean, the Ballon d'Or for me doesn't really represent anything at all. It's a popularity contest, and it's gone from at one point of being about being the best player in the world, and now ultimately it's judged on 3 or 4 weeks at a World Cup. So it makes no, it doesn't make any sense to me. The whole Ballon d'Or is, as a whole, really. But for some players, it's a real big thing. I know in France they take it very seriously. It's their award. So for Kylian, it's something he wants. He wants to win that at some point. For me, it's just about what does he want more? Does he want the Ballon d'Or or the Champions League? And that'd be quite an interesting question if someone would ever put that to him. Which one would you want more? I'm sure, he wouldn't say the Ballon d'Or because he'd come across as sounding selfish, and but ultimately, as I said, we'll see what happens. I'd love to see him stay in Paris. I really would love to see him stay and continue in Paris. And I genuinely, when he say he loves the club and he's happy in Paris, I genuinely believe that he is. But it's just interesting to see what option he takes, because obviously, as we know, on January the 1st, he can sign a pre-contract agreement with Real Madrid if he wants to. There's some kind of murmurs coming out of Madrid where they're saying, look, we're going to put an offer to him in January. I mean, I don't know how true this is. It could be a rumour. And if he doesn't sign the deal, then we're going to look to move on. Now, I've said to you already before, I don't personally think that Kylian Mpappé is actually the player that Real Madrid need. I think they need a box striker. They need an Erling Haaland. It'll be a lot more difficult to get hold of him because he's obviously under contract for a few more years, whereas Kylian's contract is up in 6 months, as we know. But look, we'll see what happens with it. But I will say one thing to you. I'm less scared about losing Kylian Mpappé now than I was a year or two ago. If he goes with my blessing. Top scorer in the club's history, gave us some incredible moments. Thank you, Kylian. If he stays, brilliant. The show goes on. But I know that above all, PSG will always be, the number one priority. PSG comes above anybody, any player. And, if he goes, good luck to him. Wish him all the best. But it's business as usual for PSG.
Yeah. And then there's Xavi Simons, people like this, whoever else there might be. But
yeah.
So it's one of those things out of our control entirely, and he will do what he will do. Let's zoom out a little bit from him, from one player only. I have this theory, and maybe that's too grandiose of a term, but I think what needs to happen before February is that I think Gonzalo Ramos needs to be involved a little bit better in this team, because we're struggling to put the ball in the net. Yet there's really a great striker, like a target player on the bench, pretty much unused, of course. Yesterday, I think he had a bit of a flu. He was not even there in Dortmund. Setting that aside, we're looking at the big picture here. And Kolomuani, he's had his difficulties. We already talked about that a little bit. Now, of course, we have Asensio back, which is an interesting option. Barcola is quite an exciting player also. How would you line up this attack? Because now, as we've established, PSG could have comfortably won the group if it was a little bit more clinical in scoring. Of course, the opportunities were there, so it's not really about the opportunities. It was just the final touch. Something happened every single time. But how would you see this big picture of our attack?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, what I will say is it's really disappointing for me to see the way what I would class as mismanagement of Gonzalo Ramos. We've got a guy here who's a bona fide number 9. He is dangerous. He's good with his feet. He's good in the air. He's such a goal threat. You've seen him score. Replaced Cristiano Ronaldo in the World Cup I think it was against Switzerland, and he replaced him and scored a hat-trick. And, he's such a good player. I've been watching him for a couple of years now. And obviously the natural step up was to come to PSG, and I had really high hopes for him. I think what the issue is here is that we've got a situation whereby, again, everybody's playing for Kylian Mpappé, and after you watch his movement off the ball, watch the position he gets himself into. That guy must be pulling his hair out with frustration, just because he's doing everything he should be doing, getting into space, losing his marker, finding great positions in and around the goal, and he knows he's not going to get the ball. One, because first option for midfield is to find Kylian, and then Kylian's likely to a couple of drag backs, take a shot, or pass to Dembele, who he's obviously got a really good, strong relationship with. So he's leaving this guy so isolated, and I feel so sorry for him because he's a hell of a striker. We paid an awful lot of money for this guy. We don't cross the ball. PSG don't cross, and ultimately, you look at his goal against Marseille, that header, ball in, bang. That's what he's all about. Get a ball in nice and early, accurate pass to him. He'll finish it off every single time, right? But the problem is we just don't play that way. And we have Kylian Mpappé again, perfect example, that Marseille game, Kylian went off injured. We started to play to the strikers. Scored 2 goals that night, I believe. Did he score twice? I think he scored twice that night. in the 4-0 win. That tells you everything you need to know. It's a real shame. I think he's been completely mismanaged, and I hope that he doesn't give up on this, because I really do feel that if he will be one of the players that will really flourish if Kylian does go next season. I think he will really start to flourish in this team. But it's just a shame that he's not, that adaptation period to PSG is not going the way he would have wanted.
I have this hope, this wish that when Nuno Mendes is gonna be back, that he would be able to give some crosses to his fellow countrymen. I'm not sure if that's the reason why it should happen or it would happen, but I'm kind of thinking that perhaps there's something to these dynamics, because that's just the way that it is. And these guys, they don't know each other that well yet. And Ramos hasn't had any kind of consistent playing time, so it's become very difficult for him. And I really agree with you. I think that is one of the players. He's maybe the player who has been sort of mismanaged, really, because he hasn't been given that opportunity. But now, of course, his initial loan deal was made permanent. So I think that sends a message to us as supporters, people who follow the team, that they do count on him. But it's just something that I think that before February comes, and there's going to be these Coupe de France matches. I mean, not an endless amount of them, but maybe few of them before the knockouts, and also, you know, that's a good sort of like launching pad for something, and then get into the Ligue 1 and do all of those things. But wasting him on a bench is really pretty outrageous to me, especially also against Newcastle. I think he came like 86th minute or something really ludicrous, when we were really like chasing a goal, when Newcastle was basically completely out of steam. They had nothing to give but a very sort of like a fairly compact low block, which they did very well. I'm not criticizing for them, and I understand their limitations currently with the squad, but not to bring him in and give him like at least like 15 minutes or something to try to be one of those people who is just, the only thing was just to get the ball into the back of the net, and that was only thing that was needed, and he wasn't given that chance.
I don't think he's even played since that game, has he?
It's a good question.
He did play against Le Havre. I don't think he played against Le Havre. Did he get any minutes against Nantes? I don't recall. Losing my memory in my old age, but and obviously he wasn't available last night. But I just hope that, you know, look, I think that we're coming into a period now whereby we need to keep Kylian fresh. We need to keep him fresh for, you know, the big games that are to come. Certainly from January onwards, we've got Coupe de France ties. We've got games. I think we've got a game we've got obviously Lille this weekend, which I'm sure Kylian will play in. It's quite a big game, and then we've got Metz just before Christmas. I think that's a game where we've got enough firepower to at least start that game without him, and get Ramos, get Kodimwani, you know, get even Barcola, some of the players on the pitch, and get those firing. Then obviously Coupe de France I think there's Trophy des Champions in
is it 4th
in January?
Yeah, 4th or 6th, I can't remember. But it's very early on. It's the first match.
Early January, that's right, yeah. And then we've got some Coupe de France games. So I'm hoping that Kylian has a bit of a rest. Hopefully some of these players that have not had a lot of game time can really, you know, impose themselves on this team. That's what really needs to happen now as we move into late December and early January, because we need everybody firing. There's no good we typically get to the Champions League and one of our big players, you know, gets injured, and then we're going to have to bring players in who've not really had much game time, you know, to try and face us at Bayern or Man City or Real Madrid, whoever we draw. So it's important that everybody gets game time now. So that's down to Luis Enrique to manage this team, to stop building the confidence of people like Gonzalo Ramos, who, again, must be so frustrated, really, really frustrated, because he's a talent. He really is a talent. I think we're lucky to have him. And I just hope that the fans and everyone gets to see what this guy's all about sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. We are now a couple of weeks away from the January transfer window. The year is pretty much closing in. There's been some talk, and even a recent holiday trip has been witnessed in the Instagram and so on by very promising Brazilian midfielder Gabriel Mochardo, and I think there's some internal politics politics that is taking place there in his team in Brazil, where there's going to be a new in Corinthians, where there's going to be a new director or some such. I can't remember exactly the details, but the one who is leaving wants to sell and the one who is coming doesn't. Okay, so that's a possibility. We don't know for sure. Do you have any thoughts of the January window? Usually a lot more quiet window. Of course, it's not nowhere near to be compared to the summer ones. But what do you think about that?
Maybe another body in midfield comes to mind very quickly. I think we're pretty stacked in attack, especially in wide areas with obviously Barcola and Dembele. Colin Moani can play out wide. Kylian Mpappé can play out wide. And we've also got Kylian Mpappé, we've got Colin Moani, and we've got Gonzalo Ramos who can play through the middle. Midfield, I would probably say one more in there. Look, I know there's been talk of potentially getting a left back in, and you know, I don't know what that says about Nuno Mendes. We know that, for Mendes. I just want him to get back, get fit, and just, you know, find his form again. He's been such a big player for us. So he's a big return for me. Prisoner Kimpembe, yes. Could we do with another defender? Yeah, absolutely. But this is a guy who's been out almost a year. I don't know kind of what his future looks like. It's going to take him time to get back up to speed. I think we have to be patient with him. I'd like to see Mukiele get more time. I'm a big fan of him as well. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I wouldn't want the club to panic buy. I want us to bring in players that are capable. I want us to bring in players that are going to be a part of the future. And I wouldn't want, you know, just be for the sake of an injury, just to bring somebody in, you know, who could potentially push another player out, especially important players. So I think a midfielder would probably be the one that I would go for. I know there's been a few kind of mentions. I think the latest one I heard was Casemiro at Manchester United. That's, again, I'm not sure what you've heard and if you've seen that in Finland or not, but obviously with Casemiro being at Manchester United, I know in the British press there's been a bit of interest, supposed interest in Casemiro, who's clearly, I know he's unfit at the moment, but not happy at Manchester United. It'd be interesting to see how he would fit in with his experience. Okay, he's probably not the Casemiro he was of 2 or 3 years ago when he was at Real Madrid winning multiple Champions Leagues, but, you know, whether he could bring something to this team, a little bit of steel, a little bit of calmness, that experience, that know-how, maybe. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I think a midfielder would be certainly the first port of call for me in terms of who we'd bring in.
Yeah. Also, just for depth, there's some good players, but there's always these injuries, and you never know what is going to happen. And we were very, very lucky that Warren Zaire-Emery got back in time, because Fabian Ruiz got injured, and having both of them off at the same time would have made things very difficult. Of course, Vitinha has been playing very well there also, but he's also just only one player. It's going to be interesting to see to what extent there is going to be any business happening in January. But I really agree with you that I hope that it's well calculated, not panic buying. Yeah, it's true that Nuno Mendes and President Kimpembe, they are question marks. When will they be back? At what point of the spring they will be back, and how long will it take for them to get into their usual? And if they both get to the usual level, I'm very happy about that. That's very good. But I also agree, me too, I'm a big fan of Nordi Mukiele. I think he's also quite underutilized player, and I think that he could ease. And I've been because he was kind of seen more as a Hakimi's backup, but now he's been more on that left side, and I think that he's quite versatile. He can play on both sides, and he's quite strong going forward. He's quite fast player also, not necessarily as fast as Hakimi or somebody like that, but still quite solid. But defensively, he is very strong. So I think he's a good option, and I think that I would like to see more of him. And there's been rumors, of course, big clubs, I think Bayern Munich at least, but maybe even others that could be interested in him. And I think rumors are rumors. You can have any amount of rumors about anything, but I think that there's something to be said about that. Usually, if you have to be a player of a certain level before there is a rumor that Bayern Munich, which is sort of fairly conservative in their recruitment, would be interested in you. So we will have to wait and see, of course. And not to make too much of a cliched segue, but another thing that we'll have to wait and see is the draw for the round of 16. That will take place next week as we're recording this now on Thursday evening. It's on Monday, and PSG will then get their next opponent. And based on the rules, of course, no one can draw an opponent from their own league. Well, we don't have them, but others do. Or, of course, from the same group where they have been during this autumn. So the likelihoods for the opponents are such that Arsenal, Atletico Madrid, Real Sociedad, Barcelona and Real Madrid have 13.59% chance to play against us. Basically, it's Arsenal and a lot of the Spanish teams. It's quite impressive, to be honest with you, that there's 4 Spanish teams as group winners, and none of them actually are leading the La Liga even at this moment. Then the likelihood of getting Manchester City is 14.75, so marginally higher, and the most likely opponent is Bayern, which is 17.30% chance to be the one. I mean, these are very specific ones. Precise percentages that they are giving. These are just the chances that have been calculated based on those bits of information that I mentioned. A few observations, I don't think that any of these teams want us particularly. I think whoever gets PSG from this group is going to consider themselves a little bit unlucky, but also that even with sort of 17 and a bit percentage Bayern, to get Bayern, there's still 83% chance that it's not them. So it's nothing to feel much about one way or another. It could be anything. I don't think that they take requests there at UEFA, certainly not from PSG anyway, maybe from some other clubs. But what do you think about these teams when you look at them? Do you have, how would you rate them?
Yeah, it's we finish second in the group, whoever we get is going to be a really, really tough game, as it always is at this stage. I mean, I think that even if we finish top of the group, there's some real tough teams in there. There's, Inter, who, by the way, I'll throw in there in my tip to win it this year. I tipped them from the start, whether they win or not, I don't know, but I think they're very well equipped to win the whole competition as an outsider. But some tough teams in there. Napoli are in pot 2 as well. It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough for PSG, whoever they get. Look, I've got teams that I would rather get than others. Of course, we look through them and think, kind of don't want them because, you try to analyse styles of play and you think, Bayern's one for me, very, very powerful team. That always, certainly of late, seem to kind of get one over on this. I think we made it too easy for them last season. And although if we did draw them, I think we could make a better game of it than we did last season. I wouldn't want to draw them at this stage. We've got, other teams don't want to draw for obvious reasons. Manchester City, who are just a very well-oiled machine, aren't they? Obviously, they're the holders of treble winners in England, and they'll obviously be hot favourites again to win it. We've been knocked out at the last 16 for the last couple of seasons now. We've kind of reverted back into that, and it'd be great if we could even make the quarterfinals. That'll be further than my own expectations. I wasn't expecting much from Europe this season, in this transitional season, but it would be nice to go into the quarterfinals. I think if we can win the league, go into the quarterfinals, do win the Coupe de France, I think that would signal a pretty good season. I'll be honest with you, I think we're going to get Barcelona. That's who I think we'll get. That was my kind of thought straight away. Barcelona are a club that will, obviously, the links with Messi, Neymar, the past, etc. You just spice it up a little bit. We've played them a few times, but Barcelona don't scare me at all. at all. Have they got good individual plays? Yes. Can they beat us? Yes. Can we beat them? Absolutely, we can beat them. They're not in their home stadium. They're not playing particularly well. So that's one team that if we did draw them, I wouldn't be afraid of drawing them. And then obviously for most people, teams like Real Sociedad, who are kind of relative unknowns at this stage of this tournament. Again, you wouldn't. It wouldn't bother you too much by drawing those guys as well. Another team I'd like to avoid is Arsenal, because they are PSG in a sense, but 2 years ahead of where we are. And that's hopefully, the way in which they play is what I expect PSG to be like in a couple of years' time, actually. Very on the front foot, full throttle, play really good football, just press and kind of pass the opponents to death almost, but also very clinical with it. So I'd like to stay away from Arsenal at this point as well. So I think Barcelona. I think we're going to end up getting Barcelona. That's as soon as I seen who we could play, that's who came to my mind.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And of course, this is one of those things also that this is pure speculation until we know. Even with these percentages, I mean, it's still it could be any one of those, and Barcelona would certainly be an interesting, exciting match with a little bit of something there. I don't think that they like us very much, and the feeling is a little bit mutual, I think. So that could be an interesting one, and that. But I do think that one of the things that is very important to remember, and every year I'm kind of reminded of this, and I remind myself of this, is that the time between the draw and the first round, first knockout round, which is usually the first match, is around the Valentine's Day, sort of mid-February type of time. It's a long time. It's a very long time. There can be some coaches, managers that are changing in different clubs, not necessarily in any of these clubs that we might be facing. That would be maybe unexpected if that happened. You never know what can happen. Injuries can come and go, form can come and go. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it goes. But whoever it is, it's very difficult to say too much about it, because we too have time to improve and pick up the pace a little bit. And not that things haven't been going badly. PSG is on top of the Ligue 1 currently, and yeah, it was Mpappé's knee away from winning the group of death. So anything can happen. I don't despair over this.
Yeah, absolutely, and nothing about it. It's really strange this season because, as I said, I touched on earlier, my expectations in Europe are just quite low, and that's really strange for PSG. We know how much tension there is around this club in the Champions League, how much kind of, it's just always been almost like the holy grail, but it's actually quite therapeutic this year that my expectations are low. Last night was kind of like, okay, if we go through, that's what we want. But if we were to drop into the Europa League, then so be it. So be it. We'll get on with it, But look, we've gone through, and it's great. And for me, before last night, I looked at us as a team that's not really capable of even getting to the quarterfinals. Why? Because we can't win away games. We can't win away from home. And you've got to be able to win on the road in these tense atmospheres, with big stadiums. If you win this competition, we haven't won an away game since, correct me if I'm wrong, Juventus, the last group game of last season, just before the World Cup. We went to Juventus and won 2-1. We haven't won since then over a year in Europe. So, you can't win this competition if that's what you're pulling in away from home. If that's your results away from home, you just cannot win it. So we'll see. Things might pick up, as you say. Things change. Things might pick up. We might turn a corner, and we'll see what happens. Much does depend on the draw. We've not even spoken about Atletico Madrid, a team that we don't think we've ever faced. That would be a real interest, very contrast, quite a contrast in styles, but also something that would be quite an interesting game to watch. They've picked up this season. That'd be an interesting one. And again, a team that I wouldn't particularly fear. If we drew them, so be it. Bring it on. But I'm not worried. If we were to go out, then we go out. We come back stronger next season. But if we was to go through and get through to a quarter-final, semi-final, I mean, do you imagine what that would do for the team? What that do for Kylian? You see, so much kind of hinges on that. This is a massive competition for this club, and whilst my expectations personally, although others might not be, it's going to be interesting. I think I'm going to, certainly as a fan, I'm going to go into this round of 16 with the pressure off. Go and enjoy it. See what you can do. See if you can spring a surprise against one of, the favourites to win the competition. It'll be interesting. But we might just pull it off with the pressure off for once. We may just pull something off. You never know. I'm never write this team off. They get my heart going a lot. They make me want to be sick sometimes, just in terms of the tension they're probably under. But I know there's so much quality in that squad and what they're capable of. So I'll never write them off.
Thank you so much, Lee. This has been really great conversation. I always love hearing your thoughts about PSG. It's always a pleasure to talk with you about these matters. I thank you so much, and have a good rest of the year, Christmas and the New Year also.
You too. Thanks again for having me on. Always a pleasure. Love it. Thank you very much. Love coming on. Cheers.
That is all for this episode. PSG women have been playing against AS Roma by the time you hear this, and perhaps we talk about that another time. There was no time to fit that in the schedule. Find and follow PSG Review online at PSG Review Pod on Twitter, and simply at PSG Review on TikTok and Instagram. Beside the usual audio podcast platforms, you can now check this show out also on YouTube, and PSG Review is also on Blue Sky if you have already adopted that service. Rate and review, make sure you have subscribed. And up next for PSG's Lille on Sunday night, and then still Metz before the Christmas break. My name is Mikko. Big thanks once more to Lee Davey, who is one of those PSG voices to whom I have a lot of time for very sharp analysis, and always a privilege to have him on the show. Until next time, peace.